the relentless fighters, the champions against human trafficking, the unsung heroes in the shadows. They are the ones who perceive the world through a different lens. They reject the confines of societal norms and regulations. They challenge the status quo with unwavering determination. Their voices may be quoted, opinions disputed, and their character both praised and criticized. But one thing is certain, they cannot be overlooked. They are catalysts for change. They pioneer new solutions. They envision a world free from the clutches of human trafficking. They mend broken lives. They embark on perilous journeys to rescue the vulnerable. They innovate, they inspire, they propel humanity forward. Perhaps it takes a touch of madness. How else can one look at a victim and envision their liberation, or listen to the silence of suffering and compose an anthem of hope, or gaze upon a dark underworld and see a battleground for justice? We stand beside these exceptional individuals. While some may deem them as eccentric ones, we recognize their brilliance, because those who possess the audacity to believe they can end human trafficking are the ones who ultimately achieve it.
I tell you what, nothing gets me more excited than starting a show with you guys and talking about ending human trafficking through prevention. I mean, I'm telling you that that is what I have dedicated my life to, and honestly, it makes me feel good every day that I get a chance to do it. Welcome to Prevention Cohort Live, guys. We are going to be doing something little school-like today. We're going to actually go over prevalence. The prevalence of human trafficking. We're going to go over Chapter 2, and then afterwards we might go over an article through the Knowledge Vault and just something together that I think might be good. And then kind of want to talk to you a little bit about an idea that I have to try to make a difference in the video game industry. We talk a lot about chat being a problem and people being groomed online, and I really think that the gaming industry needs to step up and make a difference by creating an online course for all game monitors, all community managers, all social media people, so they can at least say that they have been trained to recognize grooming and online harassment and anything that could lead up to human trafficking. So without further ado, we are going to go right ahead and jump over into the course. So this is what you have access to right now as Human Trafficking Essentials. If you go to PBJ Learning, if you type it in appropriately, you will go to PBJ Learning. And what you do is you click at the top where you will see where it says Human Trafficking Essentials. This is our #1 course. It is designed for people to be able to learn more about human trafficking at their own pace. It is not just an educational program, but it also is an opportunity for personal growth and empowerment, because everybody that uses Human Trafficking Essentials could be here right now, watching this video, being part of our community, telling us, sharing with us what's going on in their life. If you are a teacher, this is perfect for homework. You can literally assign this class. You can assign this as a class project, and your students will get an email telling them what they got as a grade, and they can send it right over to you. Students, if you are in college, this is amazing training. We believe that this needs to be taken by everybody, but you can also get university credit from Belhaven University if you decide that you want to. And everything here, all these classes, all 3 versions, the name your price version, where you can choose what you want to pay, mastery certificate if you need that for your job or for some other reason, or if you need to get university credit, all 3 of the courses are the same material, but the result is different. So you can click on Human Trafficking Essentials, name your price. What this will do is it will take you into the shop. So once you'll have to register on the site so we know who you are. Then you basically just type in how much you want to pay for the course, and then you click outside the box, and then bam, there you go. Click add to cart. When it gets added to your cart, oh, looks like I already had something in my cart. Get rid of that. So that's gone. All right, here we go. So yeah, you just add it to the cart, and then you just proceed to checkout. fill in your information, click I have read and agreed to the website terms and conditions, and place order. When you have done that, you'll get an email telling you about it, but you can also always go up to where it says My Courses, and you can click on the course that you chose, and that's how you begin your course. So what we're going to do today is we're going to jump right into Chapter 2. We spent a bunch of time the other day going over what is human trafficking, what is not human trafficking, so we went all the way through Chapter 1. Now would be a good time to stop. So now would be a good time to stop and go back and review the definition video if you'd like. So we'll give you just a couple seconds to go ahead and do that. And if not, we're going to go right ahead and jump into Chapter 2, Prevalence. So each of our chapters starts off with an overview that explains exactly what it is that you're going to be learning. So we start here in our contents. We're going to talk about the statistics of human trafficking in the United States and around the world, what kind of forms of human trafficking there are. We'll tell some real life stories, and we're going to give a little brief activity to let you practice the things that you've learned. We kind of call out the learning objectives very specifically here, and the specific questions that were from the assessment at the beginning of the course when you started. So these are the questions that you're going to learn the answers to inside this chapter. So we're not giving you the answers here, we're giving you the questions so that as you move forward, you'll actually have it. Go ahead and dive right into the first video. Who is trafficking and where is this happening?
Human trafficking is a worldwide problem that affects an estimated 40 million people, according to the International Labor Organization. These victims generate $150 billion in profits for human traffickers around the world. Victims suffer in multiple forms of trafficking, from labor trafficking and sex trafficking to more than 15 million people who are trafficked into forced marriages worldwide. While people do not need to be moved or transported to be considered victims, there are many who are transported, and some are even transported to different countries. The United Nations Global Report on Human Trafficking from 2018 identified 124 different nationalities that were forced, frauded, or coerced into Western and Southern Europe for the purpose of trafficking. Looking at the United States, we find more than 95 different nationalities that are being trafficked into the country. Within the U.S., the Department of Justice secured more than 500 convictions for human trafficking in 2018 alone. While these convictions are encouraging, estimates suggest that there are at least 50,000 people trafficked into the U.S. every year. And while 50,000 people being trafficked into the U.S. is incredible, it might surprise you to know that more than 4 out of 5 identified trafficking victims are U.S. citizens. Importantly, human trafficking victims are considered a hidden population, so these estimates may be less than the real number of victims in the U.S. Those trafficked into the U.S. and those who are trafficked within the U.S. borders suffer in at least 25 different forms of trafficking. These include individuals being forced, frauded, or coerced into construction work, hospitality, magazine sales, forced begging, erotic dancing, pornography, carnivals, agriculture, domestic servitude, illicit massage parlors, forced prostitution, and more. It is not as important to remember all of the forms of trafficking that take place in the U.S. as much as it is important to know that there is such a diverse range of ways that people are being trafficked. The range of ways that someone can be exploited is what makes it possible for human trafficking to exist in so many places. In the U.S., human trafficking is taking place in some areas more than others, but human trafficking exists in some capacity within every state. Since being created in 2007, the National Human Trafficking Hotline has identified more than 63,000 human trafficking situations across the country. The states that have the highest rates of identified human trafficking cases include California, Texas, and Florida. Even within the states, there are cities that have more human trafficking than others. Studies from the Urban Justice League and other organizations have shown that the underground sex economy of major cities in the U.S. ranges from 30 million in Denver up to 810 million in San Diego. These major cities will attract higher rates of sex trafficking as girls and women are forced into prostitution in the underground world of commercial sex.
One thing I noticed in there was that it mentions the 25 different forms of human trafficking, and I had been asked by a student a week ago if I could actually provide them the actual list of those 25 different forms of trafficking. So I think we're gonna do it live. 25 forms of human trafficking by Polaris. All right, so let's see if we can find it. Here it is. Polaris defines 25 types of modern slavery in the U.S. There's the report, and this is just a summary of it, but here we go. In the typology of modern slavery, Polaris' research team proposes a classification system that identifies 25 different or distinct types of human trafficking in the United States, including, and I am going to read them all, escort services, illicit massage, health and beauty, outdoor solicitation, I guess that's like traveling magazine salesman, residential, domestic work, bars, strip clubs, and cantinas, pornography, traveling sales crews, that's definitely the magazine sales too, restaurants and outdoor solicitation. Okay, all right. I wonder if that's solicitation like prostitution or if that's just basically trying to do sales outdoors. That's fascinating. Oh, that's why we're looking at this. So let's see, traveling sales crews, restaurants and food service, peddling and begging, agriculture and animal husbandry, personal sexual servitude, health and beauty services, construction, hotels and hospitality, landscaping, illicit activities, arts and entertainment, commercial cleaning services, factories and manufacturing, remote interactive sexual acts, carnivals, forestry and logging, health care, and recreational facilities. Illicit activities, that one reminds me of when I talk to people that are gang investigators, they explain that a lot of gang activity is actually labor trafficking. So people that get that have to be mules or take drugs from one place to the next, those people aren't necessarily deciding to do that. They are being forced to do that, that is labor trafficking. Somebody's benefiting from their labor. But this illicit activities could be, I imagine, part of that. So let's see. So Polaris analyzed more than 32,000 cases of human trafficking to develop this classification system that identifies 25 different types of modern slavery. The way humans are exploited differ greatly, as do ways to combat each problem. And that is a really, really good point because there is not a one-size-fits-all solution to this, much less thinking that exploitation is the same. This is really good stuff. I wanted to just put this inside of the course, but let me explain to you, since we're just having this conversation, one of the things that's really difficult for, let's just say, a regular person that uses the internet, someone that is just a normal human being, if you put in a link that takes you somewhere else, they can get confused. And so we try to make sure that on our course, there's no links that take you away from the course. The only thing that there is things that take you back into the course. So it's like the only buttons on this page that really do anything are the menu systems. Basically, if you want to get out, you have to click the logo of the core of the company. So I'm gonna have to find a place to put it in here, but I'm gonna do that. I'll probably do that tonight. So here we go. We are on the third lesson, victim demographics lesson, and American victim demographics quick quiz. Little activity. So everything you're going to find on here, all of the answers to the questions that are below are on this page, and so we're trying to keep you engaged here, so you don't have to go look anywhere else. So so far you've already heard some pretty alarming statistics. I mean, you're finding out that over 95 different nationalities are being brought into the United States. But even though that's the case, the majority of people that are being trafficked, or the people that are identified as trafficking victims, are actually American citizens. It is surprising. So we talked a little bit about this 25 different ways. The actual numbers here are not nearly as important. I mean, they are in some of the questions, But the actual numbers aren't nearly as important as just thinking about the scope of this crime. $30 million in one city to almost $1 billion in another city, and that's just the underground sex economy. We're not talking about the labor trafficking economy, which is crazy. I mean, I just spent a bunch of time in Humboldt County, and I got to hear about the labor trafficking happening on the legal farms that are around there, the legal farms that are around there. It's really crazy, the amount of indentured servitude that's being brought in from other countries. People are coming in as with visas to do the work, and they basically just get charged nickel and dime for everything, driving to and from their job, having a place to stay, the food, everything else, and they just can't catch up. It's really sad. There's tons of documents and tons of stories on here on the Knowledge Vault. So we'll talk a little bit about American victim demographics. So this chart may be a little confusing, and I apologize. I made the chart, so I want it to be good. But basically, we have two columns here. You have a sex trafficking type or labor trafficking type, and then we want to talk about what's the majority or the feature about that that's important. So when it comes to sex trafficking in America, because these are American victim demographics, the American sex trafficking victims are majority women. And in America, labor trafficking victims are majority men. When it comes to sex trafficking, the majority of sex trafficking victims are U.S. citizens. But labor trafficking, the majority of them are foreign nationals. The majority of both sex and labor trafficking are legally in the United States or legal citizens, and neither are being forced as the major means of trafficking. So if they're not being forced to do it, how are they being done? It's done through coercion and trickery. So it's fraud or coercion. So they're not being beaten to do this. They're being tricked into it or manipulated into it. So the majority have fraud when it comes to labor trafficking. The majority have coercion when it comes to sex trafficking. An average age is 17 years old when victimization begins with sex trafficking, and when it is labor trafficking, it's usually 22 years old. Now, I want to state clearly that statistics in the human trafficking field they vary based on who did the study, who paid for the study, whether it was paid for by a government or a private individual or a private company. So you can't really necessarily trust anything. And a lot of these studies are underfunded, so the data that they get is just not complete. And I don't mean to say, I'm not trying to talk bad about anybody that's in the field that's doing this work, because if you are doing this work, you are a hero. But the fact is that we just don't have enough money to fund these studies to get the accurate information. Plus, it's a crime, so you still have to estimate everything because you're not arresting all of these people. You're having to just make best guesses. So here we go. We're going to go through the American Victim Demographics quick quiz, and we're going to select some of these answers. So women make up a majority, and I want you to know that you don't even have to answer any of these things. This is really just you practicing to see if you understand the material. So there's no ongoing score or anything like that. We're just going to tell you whether you got the answer correct or incorrect. So women make up a majority of identified labor trafficking. So I know the answer is no. I know it's men. So let's go ahead and look up there. So it says women make the majority of identified labor trafficking. So we're going to kind of scroll up here. Majority of women, no, they're not labor trafficking, they're sex trafficking. So we're going to say false. Check that answer. Yes. Again, points don't matter. It's just really trying to show you, did you get it right or not? A majority of identified victims are legally in the United States. We said yes to that. That is true. The majority are legal in the United States. And are legally here. Is that true? The three means of trafficking someone include force, fraud, and or coercion. The means used most on victims is force. So the three means of trafficking someone include force, fraud, and or coercion. Means used most is force. Let's take a look. So the means get them to do it. Is it force? The majority have force used as the mean of trafficking. No, they don't. The majority have fraud or coercion. So that answer would be false. Three means on average, identified, and let me say something about the way that that question is worded and all this stuff. I promise you that we're not trying to trick you. We're trying to get you to think through this and really come up with the answer. We put the answers up above to make it easy so you have a chance to go scroll up and take a look at them. You don't have to go look through something complicated, but the idea of just getting you actively moving the screen up and down really makes a big difference to whether you're paying attention, whether you're thinking about the project or not. So that's kind of why we do it this way. On average, identified sex trafficking victims enter the world of commercial sex at the age of 17. So yes, that is the age that we have been able to identify. So I want to say that we have one of our advisors did a huge breakdown on the actual statistics and where all the numbers and studies come from. And I think he makes a compelling case that based on data that we have, the age of 17 has to be the most correct, although it's horrendous that it's happening at all, much less that people think it's way lower than that. And that, yeah, basically it's all bad. But the number 17 seems to be what's actually in the data. The number could be way lower. We really don't know. The studies aren't done, so I apologize for not having a completely in the concrete answer there, but that is the best answer that we have. Our take is this. These numbers are staggering, even if they are off by a huge factor. And so we just want you to kind of do a little thinking on this. You know, does your state or city fund survivor-centered shelters? Are there enough healthcare services? Are there food stamps, HUD housing? How are we going to get these people integrated back into society once we get them help? Think about that. All right, we'll do a video on victim stories, and this is done with a format called Doodly, where we just draw things out like it's a sketch, and this is done because we want to make sure that we're not being exploitative in any way, or hopefully not triggering anybody with any visuals. So we do it this way on purpose.
We have covered quite a bit of information, including worldwide and national prevalence estimates, different trafficking types, and some victim demographics. Now, let's take a look at what this all looks like in the real world. To do this, we're going to look at 2 real-world accounts of human trafficking. And while these real-world accounts are not meant to cover every instance or way that somebody can be trafficked, they do help to illuminate the ways in which people are brought into trafficking and how they are continued to be trafficked without us recognizing their victimization. The nonprofit Polaris found a majority of labor trafficking victims identified in the U.S. are legally in the country with work visas. Daniel's journey to becoming a labor trafficking victim started when he applied for and received an H-2A visa. This visa allowed him to work as a farm worker in the U.S. The fact that he became a labor trafficking victim while legally being in the country as an immigrant is not uncommon. Daniel was also paid less than he was promised when he acquired the visa. Leaving the situation was difficult because the employer took Daniel's passport and the nearest town was very far away. Additionally, like so many others, Daniel's visa was tied to his employer, so if he left the farm, his visa would be invalid. He worried this could impact his ability to legally enter the country in the future. Daniel wrestled with the idea of reporting the abuse or allowing the victimization to occur, because he did not know what else he would do for work. In the end, he and some of the other laborers were able to contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline, who worked with federal authorities to free Daniel and the others, and ensure they were paid all the back pay they had kept from them. There are somewhere between 2 to 3 million migrant workers and farm workers in the U.S. These individuals include illegal and legal workers, and while farm worker populations vary regionally across the country, overall 78% of farm workers are Hispanic, with about 95% being of Mexican descent. Keisha's story is much different from Daniel's, but she too was a victim of human trafficking in the United States. Her journey to becoming a trafficking victim started when she was placed in the foster care system at 10 years old. Keisha ran away from her foster home for the first time when she was 14 to avoid the sexual harassment she was experiencing from one of her foster family's relatives. Out on the streets, Keisha was tricked by a 26-year-old man who offered to get her back to her biological family. To financially support getting her back to her family, the man told Keisha she would have to engage in commercial sex with several of his friends in exchange for money. The friends Keisha was expected to have sex with for money turned into anyone the man chose. Keisha was forced into prostitution and eventually was arrested for solicitation and then returned back to her foster family. There she suffered more harassment and again ran away and called the only person she could think would help her, the trafficker. Forced back into prostitution, Keisha was arrested again, but this time, while being held in juvenile detention, she was able to work with an outreach group and share her story of victimization in the foster home at the hands of her trafficker. She was able to go to a residential program out of the state and able to work towards her GED and a life where she would not be exploited into commercial sex ever again. Keisha's story is unfortunately a common one, repeated by many girls around the United States. The National Runaway Safe Line reports that between 1.6 million to 2.8 million youth run away each year, and many sex trafficking victims are runaway girls who were sexually abused as children. 1 in 6 of these runaways reported missing were likely sex trafficking victims, and of those, 88% were in the care of social services or foster care when they ran. This problem is so prevalent that the FBI estimates more than 100,000 children are victims of sex trafficking every year in America alone.
And we're back. Okay, so here's one of the things that's really difficult about this. So in both of these true stories, Daniel and Keisha each had something happen to them in a positive way at the end of their story. The truth is that those are really, they are the exceptions, and we need to acknowledge that that is the reality of the situation. Many people don't get help once somebody gets caught in the situation. Things can escalate badly. So I want you to kind of think about just how easy could it be that if something like that can happen, to you or somebody that you know. If you know anybody that's ever had their passport or their visa taken away, if they went to another country, it would not be that difficult to be in a place where you would be too scared to know what to do. How does it make you feel when you hear about children being abused within a foster care system that was created to protect them? Questions we should ask ourselves. All right, so we're going to do a couple more things, and we're going to call it an evening. So we're going to do a prevalence word drag, and the idea here is that we want to get you comfortable with trying to make some decisions about what you've heard, trying to see if these are things that mean anything to you. So trafficking affects around, I know it's 40 million people, so we're going to go ahead and put that in there. Making, well, this is pretty easy. Let's see, it's $1 figure there. Making $150 billion annually. Most identified U.S. trafficking cases are in California. Texas is the only state left, so California, Texas, and Florida. Illicit underground sex economies in major cities range from 30 million in, see, I'll pick the smaller city, to 810 in San Diego. Now, yep, those answers are right. But I want to make sure that you know that the reason that we're asking these questions isn't because we want you to know these exact numbers. We want you to just understand the scope of this. And the reason this interactive stuff is here is so that you're actually touching and thinking about and making commitments to these answers. It's really easy to just kind of raise your hand in a room and have the teacher tell you that you're right, but when you actually have to start making commitments on these things, it really seems to make a difference for people. So let's go ahead and work on this one. Let's see, at least 50,000 people are trafficked into America annually, and that's people that are being brought into America to traffic them. So let's see, 80% of identified trafficking victims in America and these are U.S. citizens. In America, at least 25 types of human trafficking take place. The average age someone enters the sex trade is 17. And that pretty much closes out our prevalence chapter, moving on to risk factors and vulnerabilities, and that'll have to be for another night. All right, so I promised that we would do something else, that we would pick pick out an article from the Knowledge Vault. Actually, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to do something. I'm going to read an article that I just wrote for Radical Empathy's site, and it is simply titled "What is Human Trafficking?" So let me share my screen again. All right, here we go. So you just go to reefcares.org, reefcares.org, and when you get there, it's going to resolve the home. But at the top, it's going to have a single blog up here that says, "What is human trafficking?" And this blog right here is going to answer 10 questions that are the top requested questions that I have found on the internet. So we start off with number one. What is human trafficking? So first off, let me go ahead and say that I tried to put this on here at the beginning, like be aware of your limits. So if you're reading this and something, affects you in some way, just take a break. So let's see. What is human trafficking? It's a criminal activity where people are forced to work or do sexual things against their will. I tried to simplify it as possible, but it also is important to note that it has to be for someone else's financial benefit. We're going to talk about that right here. So we cover the AMP model, which you guys will remember if you've taken Human Trafficking Essentials. We talked about the action, means, and purpose. I went ahead and included a link to the TVPA, so if you want to read more about the actual Trafficking Victims Protection Act, you can get the actual text. I included a video here that goes over what human trafficking is. It's a really fantastic brief article or brief piece, and I think we're going to go ahead and roll it.
Over 20.9 million men, women, and children are victims of human trafficking. But do you know what human trafficking actually is? In a small sleepy town, people are dreaming. But not everyone's dreams will come true. Human traffickers prey on people's dreams and lure them away for their own benefit. How do they do this? Human trafficking doesn't happen all of a sudden. It's a process. First, traffickers act. This includes recruiting victims, transporting them to the place where they'll be exploited, hiding them from authorities, and receiving victims from other traffickers. So why don't the victims run away or say no? Because traffickers use different means. This includes threatening or forcing victims to do what they want, abducting or deceiving the victims, and abusing power. Sometimes traffickers promise small payments or benefits to get the victim to cooperate. And why are the traffickers doing this? The purpose of trafficking is exploitation. Traffickers take advantage of victims for their own profit or benefit. This is human trafficking. This man's neighbor tells him that he has a great job for him on a very safe construction site and that he'll be paid a lot of money. With more money, he can make his dreams come true. He agrees to take the job. A few days later, the neighbor's friend picks him up and they drive to the construction site. It's a very long way from his home. This man is put to work immediately without any training or protective equipment, without enough to eat or drink, and with very few breaks. After many months, he's only been paid a fraction of what he was promised. He knows he's been tricked, but he doesn't have enough money to get home. This man is a victim of human trafficking. He was recruited by his neighbor and tricked into thinking he was going to work at a safe construction site for fair pay. Instead, he was forced to work long hours in unsafe conditions for almost no money, while others benefited from his exploitation. One day, while looking for jobs online, this woman comes across an opportunity to work in a restaurant in a big city. Her application is successful, and her new employer arranges for her travel there. She is met at the airport and driven to a part of the city that looks nothing like she expected. The car pulls up to a building. The door is shut and locked behind her. She is made to perform sex acts against her will. She is trapped. This woman is a victim of human trafficking. She was transported by a trafficker from the airport to the location of the job. She arrived at the location and realized it was not the restaurant job she was expecting. The traffickers used force to keep her there. She was then exploited for forced sex work. This 14-year-old boy on school break is approached on the street by a woman who looks trustworthy. She tells him that she needs workers at her factory, and she promises him lots of money. He brings her to meet his parents. They are so happy for him. He'll now be able to save money for school. The woman drives him to the next town. They pull up to an old building. There is someone waiting for him. As he is led inside, the nice lady drives off. The factory isn't anything like she described. There are lots of people working, including many children. He works all day, and after just a few hours of sleep, he starts again. He is sad. This isn't what he expected. He misses his family. After weeks, he still hasn't received any salary or been allowed to contact them. He is trapped. This boy is the victim of human trafficking. He was tricked by the woman who recruited him on the street. He was then received by a trafficker when he arrived at the factory and exploited by being forced to sew clothing. For anyone under the age of 18, only the act and purpose matter for it to legally be a case of human trafficking. Understanding that human trafficking doesn't happen all at once, but instead is a process of act, means, and purpose, helps us better identify victims and trafficking trends. People everywhere are dreaming and looking for opportunities to make those dreams come true. Human trafficking is happening all around us. Will you recognize it when you see it? To learn more, visit iomx.org.
All right. Well, there is a very eye-opening short video that covers it. So how prevalent is human trafficking? And earlier this evening, we went through the prevalence section, chapter 2 of Human Trafficking Essentials. And I'm going to be very honest, it's very hard to figure out exactly how much human trafficking there is in the world. But according to all of the estimates that are out there, it numbers in the tens of millions. So this particular estimate from the Global Estimates of Modern Slavery, Forced Labor, and Forced Marriage report, they claim that around 40.3 million people all over the world are having this happen to them, and 25 million are in labor trafficking, and they believe that there are 15.4 million people in marriages they didn't choose. So it's like really crazy thinking about how even that, forced marriage is actually a thing. Come on, guys, what are we doing to each other? All right, so we talk a little bit about what are the main forms of human trafficking. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about the typology of modern slavery and how Polaris says there are 25 types of trafficking. But in here, we're only talking about the two main types, which is sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Then, of course, we have more articles on the knowledge vault that will include the 25 types. Who are the victims of trafficking? They can be factory workers, farm workers. They could be somebody in your family or your friends. They really could be anywhere. What are the common signs of trafficking? So one of the things that the video showed a little bit ago is like people are dreaming and they want things. So one of the things that you need to think about is that there are things that people can exploit about you that could be considered vulnerabilities or weaknesses. And so if you have things that are happening in your life that make your life difficult and you are looking for ways to escape that, those vulnerabilities can be used against you to exploit you. If, for example, these are some things to think about that somebody might indicate that somebody's being controlled by somebody else. So if you don't have control over your own documentation, passport, your ID card, somebody else is in charge of that, you might be in trouble, or somebody else might be in trouble. If you have marks or bruises on your body, scars, you could be being physically hurt. If you're having financial problems, that makes you a little more vulnerable to somebody offering you money in ways that may not be standard. You may have unreasonable work hours. You may be working really long hours without breaks or days off. And I'm telling you this because I was being labor trafficked when I worked in the video game industry for a number of different companies. I didn't even realize this was going on with me. I was working incredibly long hours. It was crazy, and I wasn't being compensated for all those extra hours. I mean, among other things. So being cut off people, if you can't see your friends or family, you know, you might be being trafficked. If you are stuck in one place, if you can't leave, if somebody is afraid of the police, that is always an indication that something is going on with that person. So what we want you to do is we want you to be thinking about vulnerabilities and the things that make you more likely or more susceptible to having somebody take advantage of you, or for somebody to take advantage of somebody that you know. How is human trafficking prosecuted? Well, there are laws against human trafficking on an international level. There are laws at national levels that make human trafficking illegal, but it could be a little bit different in every jurisdiction. So this sort of explains that it's treated as a crime in different ways depending on where it happens. So, for instance, in the United States, human trafficking is law at both federal and state levels. So sometimes there are different state laws that are more specific about specific types of trafficking. How do you report a case of human trafficking? Well, here's the thing. If you think anything is wrong, we want you to call the National Human Trafficking Hotline right now. Go ahead and put it in your phone right this second. Just stop everything you're doing. Hit pause. Put 888-373-7888 in your phone. List it as the National Human Trafficking Hotline. If you feel like you are in any sort of danger, or somebody that you know might be in some sort of danger like this, get to a safe place and call that number. There are a lot of other details in here. We're more than happy to recommend each and every one of these things. But yeah, we always suggest that you start with the National Human Trafficking Hotline because honestly, the thing is that many police stations in different cities do not have people that are trained to really understand this topic. So the National Human Trafficking Hotline should be able to help you find somebody that can find the right person to talk to. How can we prevent human trafficking? Well, the main way you can prevent human trafficking is actually learning about it and understanding it so that you can recognize it, which is why we spend so much time talking about the definition of human trafficking every time we get a chance to talk together. So we always start with education, then additional sections, stronger laws and enforcement. We want to basically put the bad guys in jail. We want to try to make sure that somebody got caught up in this by no fault of their own, like if they were groomed, they were being forced or coerced into doing something that they don't wind up with a record that they don't deserve. Supporting victims. I can't tell you how difficult it is to be in this field and know how many people are not getting the help that they need so that they can get out and stay out. When I find that people go back to their traffickers, it absolutely breaks my heart. And sometimes just literally because they can't afford they don't have job training, they can't afford rent or food. Addressing vulnerabilities, and this is something that's really difficult because we need to work on our societal vulnerabilities, like the number of homeless that we have in the country right now, people with lack of health care, poverty, etc. These are huge problems, and we owe it to our citizens to do something about it. And again, not just education, but raising awareness about human trafficking as an actual societal issue through public campaigns, news stories, etc. So 2 more questions. What is the impact on society? Basically, the problem that I see is that it really it breaks communities, and it breaks support systems, and it causes us to not be able to trust each other. And I think that it's really difficult to try to put a price on that, but it's a massive thing. We've got to try to work on it. This is the thing that's really difficult. It breaks our basic rights. You know, our right to be free is the most important thing that we have. And when somebody is being trafficked, they are not free. It's just not right. What is the role of government in addressing human trafficking? Well, government could do some amazing things. We can create laws and protections, support organizations that are making a difference and doing the right things, can enhance global cooperation, we can share research and data, and we can continue to try to raise awareness. So these are our basics. This was like I said, I wanted to just go through an article with you guys just so we had something. And then I did want to talk just for a second about what's going on with video gaming and chat rooms and things like that. I don't know. Should I pull up a bunch of statistics or anything like that? Let's talk about online. See if I can pull up a stat or something that makes some sense. But basically, what's going on is that people are being groomed constantly. There's an astronomical number of people that are being groomed through online chat rooms and things like this. Let's see. Yeah, we'll just go ahead and just jump right into it. So this is an article that's up on the Knowledge Vault. Traffickers move online to search for victims. It's been around for a little while. This is not anything new. We started to see people during the pandemic all move to online. So we have a lot of kids that are jumping online. We talked a lot about what happened with COVID. These people were using the internet only after the outbreak of COVID. People also have been looking for cheaper devices like smartphones to get to it. Let's see. This particular study, conducted by these people, further goes on to show that among those who had felt uncomfortable during an online interaction, 53% responded by simply blocking the sender. That's great place to go. 31% told the sender they were uncomfortable. 25% ignored them. 21% deleted the post, and almost 16% deleted their entire social media accounts. And 8% relented to the sender's request after repeatedly saying no to them. Wow. Experts feel that it is those 8% who are at serious risk. I would agree. If you are interacting with an unsafe person that made you feel uncomfortable during an online interaction, 8% is a pretty high ratio. So grooming or child grooming, and we haven't talked about this tonight, but basically it kind of starts off with somebody earning a kid's trust and then tricking them till eventually the point where they can take advantage of it. And so this really gets broken down here in pretty good details. So basically what's happening is you've got these traffickers that are using new technology to reach people at scale. They're not doing it one person to one person anymore. Now they have written programs and they've built applications. So those applications are going out and they're working 24 hours a day to try to groom people automatically, to try to trick them, to try to find the people that are more vulnerable. So example here, it's like once you download an instant loan app, they ask your permission to access your information like the photo gallery and messages. And then the blackmail starts. It's like, what is going on with that? Well, what's happening is people are vulnerable, so they need money. So they download this app, which gives them the ability to get into the photo gallery, and then this cheap instant loan app is doing this work of learning how to groom these people and how to trick them. So if you had a picture on your phone, if you gave this app the ability to look at, the app decided to upload it, and somebody on the other side said, "Oh, that's a naughty picture that you shouldn't have. We're going to use that." Well, all of that can be automated now. It's not even to mention all the deep fakes that can be happening. I mean, this stuff is really scary. So my point is that we have a lot of work to do to teach people about online safety, online security, etc. And somebody, in my opinion, game industry needs to be thinking about this. We need to get in front of it. And by in front of it, I mean we need to go out and we need to say, look, here are the things that we need to make sure all of our online content moderators understand. Here are the things that they're going to be looking for. We need to create like a standard, and it needs to be done by the gaming industry itself. We want to put this forward. I'm happy to be the spearhead for this. I will work with anyone to create a list of learning objectives so we can actually move forward. Personally, I think our online course right now, as it stands, Human Trafficking Essentials, is the first aid kit that everyone needs. But I am more than happy to build something specific for the game industry so we can put an end to this through prevention. You know, we need to do a better job of training our staff to look for vulnerabilities and to be able to protect our customers. Ultimately, long term, that's what we're trying to do. These people are customers and we want to take care of them. Okay, that's about enough for me for tonight. I really appreciate you spending time with me. And if there's any questions or if you need anything, just get me at pbjlearning.com/contact or text me at 512-521-8874, billy@pbjlearning.com. For PBJ Learning and the Prevention Cohort live show, we appreciate your time and we'll talk to you soon. All right.